I was,
Somebody pay attention. There you go.
Okay, I had the motion. Did we have a vote for the approval of the March 8 minutes?
We need a second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? It's carried. All
So
right,
Johnson made the motion. Who seconded it?
Bill Johnson made the motion.
But who?
I did.
Okay.
I'll
thank you.
second.
Okay.
Patrick's here now.
Yeah, I
I don't-
know.
Rid of this thing up in the middle of the screen.
Okay. I'm gonna take things out of order for the.
just hit got it. You just tap on the word got it. And that'll go away.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody. I'm going to go to the agenda for today. And we had a packet of information from our attorney, Patrick, and he is online. And I want him to explain the meaning of the packet and the request for a stay on the harbor master's potential decision for moorings in the cove. So Patrick, would you take the floor, please, and give our members a rundown?
Yeah, happy to. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Patrick Lyons. I'm one of the town's attorneys. I'm at the law firm Meat & Peabody out of Ellsworth. I've worked with the number of you before, and a few years ago, we helped redraft the harbor committee or the harbor ordinance. And here we are now, so in following an appeal pursuant to that ordinance. So I guess it's working all right in that sense. So what's happened is, I'm sure, I know you guys are all very familiar with what's going on. The South Shore Cove Association filed what they frame as an appeal to a letter that John sent to their attorney at the end of March, explaining how he had provided temporary approval to the fleet for those 4 moorings. And what happened was attorney Stephen Wagner filed this appeal, and he also filed, but with it, he filed a request for stay. And I actually called Stephen Wagner this morning for another matter. It's not a big state, especially, Hancock County is not a big area. So I deal with him frequently, but long story short, I think what he's trying to do here is preserve rights and just to be safe, and then ask, so he filed the appeal, and then he asked for a stay, which basically means don't do anything. And because John indicated in his letter to Attorney Wagner and the association that he would make a final decision on whether or not to grant permanent these 4 moorings in the cove to the fleet. And so basically they're asking, here's our appeal to preserve our rights, but please just stay it until John makes his final decision. Then we'll decide whether or not to appeal. I think I would advise the committee to do that, to grant the stay. There's no sense in addressing this appeal. It may be mooted for a number of reasons. I also understand that the fleet and these folks, the South Shore Cove Association members, are talking still, and maybe may work out some resolution to all of this that would, avoid the need for the committee to do anything, or they won't. But either way, it doesn't make any sense for the committee to take any action until John decides on those moorings and we see what happens. So that's the gist of it. The committee should hold off in discussing the merits of this appeal whatsoever. You don't want to do so without the appellants present at a meeting. You need, they don't want there to be any allegations of, they didn't have the right to defend themselves in that. So at this point, I think all there is that I would advise you only to discuss whether or not to grant the stay, and I would advise you to grant the stay, and then we'll see what happens after that.
Thank you. You would entertain questions from the committee members if there were any, Patrick?
Happy to, but I guess again, just let's avoid talking about the merits of this whole
Right.
deal, and we could, but anything procedural, happy to field any questions.
Does anyone have any questions? If there are no questions, I'm going to ask for a motion to grant.
Looks like Howie has a question.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
No, I didn't say anything. I just raised my hand, Rick. I'm sorry. Yeah, I just want to kind of understand this as a procedural thing, because I'm new to all this. And so, generally speaking, with the committee, we give our opinions so John can act on them. And clearly, he has his own merits of what he's going to do and how he's going to do it. But we tend to think that we can, at least help influence his decision occasionally. But we work together on these things, in that sense. And so up until this point, I would have thought it would have been fine to discuss this. And it seems natural to discuss it, like what the committee feels about it and how we want to try to help persuade it a little bit. And in that sense, and working together through the issue. And so it seems awkward to me, like, when do we know the line is defined, when we can talk about something or when it might come up for an appeal and we can't talk about it, or does all the conversation we had previous to this, the suggestion of not communicating about the merits of this one issue?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I would say so I don't know if anyone's been following what's going on in Brooksville, Bucks Harbor, and that there's a lot of controversy there with enforcement of Bucks Harbor Marina and the Harbor Committee and the Harbor Master. And I'm advising the town there as well. And I kind of got involved after a lot of things happened. But what I've learned is, one, the harbor committees and the harbor master, I've known this, but I've just, obviously harbor committees do advise the harbor master and work with them. That's part of your responsibilities. But your ordinance, which I drafted in large part, but almost every other harbor ordinance in the state, I've looked into this because it has the harbor committee do a lot of roles and has the harbor committee act as the appellate body for when someone appeals a decision of the harbor master. And the more I've seen this all in practice, the more I've determined that's really not the best way to do it. I think I would, something to put on the harbor committee's radar for consideration soon is, you may want to consider revising, and I'm happy to help with this, being easy, revising the harbor committee ordinance, the harbor ordinance, to instead have the harbor committee act as the appellate body. Probably have your board of appeals, the town of Bar Harbor's board of appeals, or maybe the select board act as the appellate body, and then it could go to the court. And that would avoid any kind of conflicts when it comes to if a harbor master decision is appealed, because as it's set up, you talk about issues, the merits of an issue, you advise the harbor master, then John goes and makes a decision, and then you have that decision appealed to you. Well, it's kind of like the Supreme Court of the United States talking to a trial court judge saying, well, this is how we see it, and then have that appeal go back to him. You want to keep that separate. And there are certain cases in Maine law where when that line gets too blurred, it can in essence nullify a decision and have it all taken, a court basically say there's too much influence between these two bodies. And then they have, decision-making authority. On the appeal, it's just too muddled, and it makes a mess of things. So the reason why, and I advised the committee and John on this issue, because we knew it, okay, they're getting ready, they got lawyers, this could be appealed. Let's avoid any, because you guys will hear that appeal. That's why here, Howie.
Sure.
But very good point. And I think, moving forward as soon as possible, we could make a minor amendment to the harbor ordinance to just take the harbor committee out of the appellate role and then give it to the Board of Appeals, or just right to this town council.
So we have that in the ordinance after our decision goes to the select board.
Yeah, we could just,
So we have that in the ordinance, and then after that, obviously refers to the Maine Superior Court.
yeah, we could just get rid of, that's a lot of extra steps. When you look at it, it's, well, how many appeals how many people do you want to go to? We just cut out the middleman, as they say. And
So what are you going to cut out? Our
I would
vote or the
I would-
harbor?
I would advise that the town change the harbor ordinance, so an appeal of a harbor master decision goes directly to town council to review. And then that, if someone wanted to appeal the town council's decision, they could appeal it to Superior Court.
So what, if decisions or rules we'd made affect, it'd be the same as the harbor masters?
Well, you don't make these, I mean, basically you're advising the harbor master, you're working with them to, that's your job, right? In part, just to advise John or whoever the harbor master is. And so I think it makes it cleaner, allows you to just basically do everything you're doing now. And then you don't have to deal with appeals, which I'm sure you guys would be okay with, not having to then sit as a panel, so to speak, and deal with all this. And the town council is more than capable of doing that as well. So
our duties wouldn't change as per the ordinance?
no, nothing would change other than you don't have to deal with these appeals, and then you don't have to worry about, what you tell John or what your opinions are.
May we submit our own opinion?
At that point, you could. Right now, don't. As I said, just let's avoid the harbor committee discussing the merits of all this, because you will be the appellate body here if there's an appeal. Well, you are right now, because we're considering to stay the appeal. But once that ordinance is changed, if the ordinance is changed to cut you out, then yeah, you can submit any opinion you want to the harbor master.
And
We use-
we could discuss that while it's happening also.
Right.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, exactly. You could feel free to be like, I think this is great. I think this is awful. I think we should paint the house blue versus green, whatever. It's but not right now, because the ordinance still has you, right now you're hearing the appeals. So let's avoid discussing the fleet association issue until, if there's an appeal to you, then that's your job. Then you should say, I think this John was right, or I think John was wrong. Then you can say whatever you want. Then you'll vote to either uphold or, overturn or maybe modify his decision. But until that appeal, the merits of the appeal are before you at a hearing, you shouldn't be discussing it.
I think it's really important for us to have a vote before such matters go to the selectmen. A lot of times they don't know our ordinance, they don't know the intricacies of it. And I think it's very important. And when we go as a united front at a lot of this stuff, we've had a lot of positive outcomes from it. And they learned things that was never presented before from other parties involved.
Yeah, no, I hear that makes complete sense. And I think you could still accomplish that goal, but not have to be the appellate body. You could, any kind of potentially controversial issue or decision of the harbor master, you would be able to, to write an opinion or formally put, here's the position of the harbor committee on this, and here's why we support the decision of the harbor master, or here's why we disagree with the decision of the harbor master, and then an appeal could be filed to the select board or the town council, and they would have that as part of it. So you would still be able to do that, but it avoids having you be in the middle of all the appeals.
So Patrick, it's Donna. So if I understand correctly, that would remove our authority that we now have.
Yeah.
We would have an opinion, but not any say as far as a decision.
I mean, so yes and no. You would no longer be the appellate body that would kind of get to determine whether or not John got it right. So yes, in that sense. But other than that, nothing else in your role as the harbor committee would change.
But specifically, we would lose the ability to have the authority to make a change in the appellate.
Yeah, you would no longer be, under my proposal, you would no longer be making a decision regarding, an appeal from the harbor master's decision. That,
We
again,
do that anyway. What we do is we make a recommendation to Joe or to the selectmen, but we don't presume to make the final decision.
What he's saying is, in this case, we would, if we continued to be the appellate decider. And if we give that up, we would lose that ability to make the final decision. Yes.
in this,
Final decision in
Oh.
cases.
Okay, hold on,
in
hold
this
on.
narrow circumstance,
Can-
you would lose that ability to be an appellate body, but nothing else would change otherwise. And again, it's just my suggestion. You as a harbor committee should figure that out. If you don't want that, then we don't do it. But Howie?
Yeah, I just want to try to organize this conversation a little bit because it seems a little disjointed. So Bill, right now we do make recommendations to the harbor master. Absolutely, right? And that's our role for the most part. However, there's this slight narrow gap here where if John makes a decision that wants to be appealed, all of a sudden we're now making a decision. It's not a guidance anymore. It's already the way the charter is written, Bill. It's not like something we can change at this. I mean, it's what we're living with right now. I'm trying to explain it to you. And so this one little narrow case of where there's an appeal, we do make a decision at that moment that's like legally binding on some level. However, now what Donna's saying is that if we change this amendment or whatever it is, then all of a sudden now we won't have to make that decision anymore. Like we'll be removed from making that decision, and it'll just go one step above us in the whole hierarchy of appeals. There's 3 different levels of appeal. So it'll just go to the next step, and then we will be able to give a recommendation the way that you're suggesting, Bill, that we do everything else. Now, the last part that I wanted to just articulate is that, Donna, even though we right now have this authority, it's like such a limited authority because no matter what our decision is, it can be appealed beyond us. And so like, it would be better, I think, that if we could just all communicate together and talk about it and make a recommendation to John, then we're all on the same page to begin with. And then just like what Chris said, we would have a stronger case if we went later to the appeal body and say, as a harbor committee, this is what we feel. And John knew that ahead of time and he made his decision, and I think that makes all sense to me.
Let me
That's
interject
how I
here
understand
right
it.
now. I don't think we should try to make any changes while this particular situation is in effect.
Limbo.
Agreed. That would.
This is for a discussion for the future. Patrick has to leave at 5 o'clock. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Patrick,
Yeah.
I have one question for you before you leave. You're advising us to endorse the stay. Why?
Well, so because this stay, I'm advising you to endorse the stay because this appeal is really just filed as a placeholder because John, and it has to do with John's letter sent telling the association, I'm going to make a decision in a month about whether or not I'm going to grant these moorings permanently. And so he hasn't made that decision. They filed this appeal because Stephen's a lawyer and I would probably do the same thing because if you're not 100% clear whether or not you should be filing an appeal because you're worried you might lose the right to do so, you just file it and say, this is, kind of a placeholder, preserving my rights. But and then they come out and say, but please don't act on it because this may all be mooted by John's actions later. Or as I said, the fleet and the association are talking, maybe they'll work out a deal. So that's why it would be premature. There's really no need to do so. It might be a waste of time because then 2 weeks afterwards, John makes a final decision and then they could appeal that. So what they're basically saying is, here's our placeholder appeal. Please don't do anything until John makes a final decision. Then that will influence, whether or not we file an appeal or anything in that sense.
So
Okay, thanks.
actually, I'm going to ask for a motion from the Harbor Committee to grant the stay of the appeal.
Yeah, and actually, I drafted some quick language, just if you want to put in your minutes, I would advise you to make a motion that the Harbor Committee grant the South Shore Coves Association's request to stay consideration of its appeal of the Harbor Master's March 28th, 2022 letter.
I make that motion.
Is that
I do.
seconded?
I'll
Story,
second it.
okay. It's moved and seconded to adopt the appeal as prepared by Patrick. Any other discussion? If not, I'm going to ask for a vote. All in favor of granting this stay?
Hi.
Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much.
Can you email me that language?
I can email John, and I've got John and Rick's email. I'll send that right now.
Thank you.
Thanks
you
for your
very
time,
much.
Patrick.
Yeah, of course, and I'm happy to talk about, and as we move forward, you may likely see me again, and we'll address
So
this.
we will.
I can also just, talk about maybe some amendments to the ordinance when you've got more time to consider it.
Thank you very much, Patrick.
Thank you all. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
So I'm going to move on to the first item, the new business, which was the parking lot discussion and how we, with the decisions that your group has come up with.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I wasn't prepared right now. So that's all right though. So I think what we had was, John, can you just remind me what I sent you? Because
Sure.
I think what we said was that we wanted to make a proposal to the Harbor Committee that and to try to reduce the parking issues. We thought that overnight parking was one of the biggest concerns, because overnight parking led to people just leaving their car there. So it turned into 24-hour parking. And so one of those areas is the spillover from the Cranberry Islands people who sometimes get a parking permit from the police department. And when their lot runs over, then they've traditionally, well, as of recently, come down and talk to John, and then John issues a permit. So we're asking that we don't do that for this year, and don't allow that sort of transition of those people, because we honestly don't feel that they have a lot of marina business, and they're taking up spots that other people in the marina could be using in this case. In addition to that, since we came up with that idea and decision. I think is his name Dave Kearns. I don't know, Officer
Yes.
Kearns. Yeah. Yeah, he went off and did some parking modifications to all the bylaws of the parking ordinance, and they're also gonna take the overflow people from the I don't know, the police department area and move them into the Gray Cow. So that's what they're deciding to do with them. So they're not even gonna ask us this year, theoretically, in Dave's suggestion / proposal that he made. So I just want to let you know that, that's happening as well, but I think we can still reinforce this on our end by asking John not to do that anymore.
What I need from you folks is a motion to not allow overflow parking from the police department's paid parking.
So move,
To go to the marina, is that correct?
That's correct.
so move.
Second,
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's carried.
And then just to follow up real quick, there were a couple of other things we talked about that we just wanted to make you aware of, but we don't need motions on them. One of them was that we're gonna paint the stripe by the farmer's market to designate where the farmer's market is and where the road is. So we just thought that was a good safety thing all the way around. Some people, when they're driving out of the marina, sometimes they go into that parking lot by accident. And then sometimes the farmer market trucks, they pull out a little bit. And so that's really defining a line that where the road is and isn't. And we thought that was a good safety feature. And then John's looking to try to do a little more enforcement, which we're all happy about. And he really wanted to get started with the 1 hour parking, and he wanted to ensure that there were enough signs that represented what was going on. So he's gonna, we just talked about getting some new signage for the no parking areas. Or 1 hour
I
parking.
have, when you're done, I have a
Yeah.
question about parking. I noticed that, I walk frequently through town, and I noticed that the Sound Drive that leads up to where the farmer's market parking is, that road is straight, wide, very wide, like 20 feet wide. And there's no parking allowed on that street at all. That leads perpendicular right to where the farmer's market parking area is. Why is that? Why is no parking allowed there is my question, when in town, for example, on Shore Drive, that's windy, narrow and whatnot, there is parking allowed on that, where your
Yeah.
sight is impaired by the curves.
So can I just say, Donna, honestly, like, we're not even looking into that. Like, we're totally focused right now on like the asphalt of the marina, in that sense.
No, I understand that. But my question is why is there no parking allowed on that straightaway there?
That'd
Well-
be a good question for Jim Willis.
Oh, there we go.
But read the
That's 'cause
traffic
that is
ordinance.
outside of the marina's purview.
Right.
If you read the traffic ordinance, explains all this. And it's actually the charging, parking, or the overflow we're doing wasn't even legal to be doing. It designates where you can charge for parking, how long they can do it, that in the ordinance.
Wow.
And that same ordinance is what Dave Kearns is gonna change, so that they're doing away with those spots as specified by the municipal office and going to the gray parking lot for that.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about the overflow. What I was talking about was, in general, we have this parking issue that we've been addressing. And when I look at that, I see a wide open road that no parking is allowed, even though there's clear sight view. And I was wondering, why is there no parking allowed on the side of the road there?
But that's not a marina problem.
I mean, it could come down to a service vehicle.
It could
can't it?
definitely.
I have
affect
no
the-
idea, Donna,
Yeah, that's what I was just wondering. So
Okay.
you're saying the question goes to
I suspect
Willis?
the neighbors had quite a lot to do with that decision. But anyway, I think it's a reference that we should send to the police department and not the harbor committee.
Do we need a motion for that?
No, I don't think we're going there, are we?
We just read the ordinance, and then a lot of times they'll tell you what side of the streets somewhere you can park on and what you're not. So they grant one side and that designates, and you can kind of get a roadmap to why they do things in certain areas. And so a
Yeah,
lot
there's
of
no
it,
parking on either side, yeah. Just
so there a
seems
lot of
that,
it has
would
to
be
do with
helpful.
swing radius as well.
yeah, it's wide open and it's 21 feet wide. It just seems, it's a nice straightaway and it would relieve the problem of the parking that we have in the marina, which is within walking distance of that road that leads directly to it. I'm just thinking it seemed like a very good, safe solution since there's clear sight, no curves and wide open.
And there is a parking committee, but I don't know when the last time they've met.
I hear you, Donna. It might be a suggestion, it might be something we want to look at. I didn't even think about looking at it.
Well, the
So
only reason I suggested is because it could take a lot of parking pressure off the marina
I
parking.
think, yeah, I think we want to try to work within the marina first let's
Yeah.
fix
No,
what we
I'm just
got.
wanted to,
and
I just,
then-
it was just an observation when I was making parking
Sure.
circulation for this study.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's something to consider for sure.
Okay, thank you.
To everybody. If that's, if we're done with the parking situation, I'm gonna go to the next item on the agenda, which is a winter rate discussion. And I'll turn the thing over to John for
Sure.
a review of what we're doing now and suggestions for the coming year.
Sure, this is our normal time of year when we discuss, winter rates when the season's over before the summer season starts. I don't have any specific recommendations. It's just something that we normally do in the spring. And if you want me to go over our current rates, I can.
Yeah, would you please, John?
Sure. Currently, monthly dockage for a boat under 45 feet for a resident is $175. A non-resident is $275. That takes care of probably 95% of the boats we see. We do have a few that slip over the 46-foot mark. That bumps a resident boat to 215 and a non-resident to 300. The Sunbeam currently pays $385 per month plus the full $150 a month electricity that we charge everybody. Mooring rentals, $60 a month for a mooring float. We don't get a lot of attention there. And if anyone's interested in the outboard float in the winter, it's $60 a month or $5 a day. That really incorporates pretty much everything except for storage of floats and boats. $9 a foot for a boat if you're a resident, $18 if you're not. Floats are 90 cents a square foot if you're a resident, $1.80 a square foot if you're not. Other than daily dockage, which I do very little of, that about covers the winter rates.
My suggestion is that we've experiencing an 8% inflation rate right now, and that would only be logical to be the bare minimum increase of these rates. But that's just open for discussion.
Would a 10% raise in rates be reasonable, John?
Yeah, that might be a good idea, Bill. I don't think we have anything comparative other than dice heads. Do you know what they get, John?
I don't know exactly what their winter rates are, but I do know they're charging more than we are. Obviously, we're the desired destination there getting quite a bit of overflow from us because I turn away 10 or 15 boats every fall now. A 10% bump on our $175 a month charge to a resident would basically bump it $17.50.
192.50. Do you want to keep the numbers round, or should we do like 190 and then?
It would make sense to just bump it $15 to me, but it's your recommendation.
Keep the numbers round, Chris.
So motion to raise each category of the slip rental by, or raise everything by 15. That's not done by square foot.
Yep,
thought you were
raise
saying
monthly
10.
dockages by $15 across the board.
Yeah, then I mean, some would be great. The high end would be not exactly the percentage, but then the lower end, you know what I mean? But or do it 20 and then you'd get your higher percent out of, because the 215 would be 2150, it'd be 2750. So meeting in the middle between the high, 10% on the high and the low.
Any other suggestions?
I think that if you did it by percentage, it would make it fair for the larger boats and the smaller boats, because it would have it would just be fair rather than having the smaller boats share the expense of the bigger boats.
You
Well,
have
they
a
would just-
suggestion, Donna, for what percentage?
How about this? How about let me work the numbers over and I'll come back to you with a set of numbers with a percentage, and I will round them to make them even numbers, and you guys can vote on it at our next meeting.
Even
Perfect.
better.
I have a question. When was the last time we raised our rates?
Winter rates?
Yeah.
I would say probably 3 or 4 years ago. And it's probably in the 15 years I've been here, maybe only the second or third time that we've ever raised winter rates.
So it's time.
It was 150. I think it was 2 years ago, we raised it to 175 and 275, those ones. But we should be documenting too when we do our price changes, so we can refer back to them.
Well, that's a good suggestion that we will discuss this at our next meeting. Is everyone in agreement with that?
Yes.
If you could just throw something in your minutes, Chris, to prompt me to do that, I will
Yep.
have it set for our next meeting.
Thank you, John.
Okay. Any general issues anyone wants to bring up? Old business? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded? Moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right,
Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.